Hey guys, Marsinged here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so we just got the EZA details tweeted out on the official JP Dokkan Twitter account. We are getting the sub-EZAs for the INT Base Meta, the STR Frost, I guess it is full power Frost, right? And then we have the physical Champa, and then of course the main event himself, the one actually getting the 30-stage EZA Extreme Z battle, is the STR Jiren. So this guy was expected to be the EZA for this celebration. He is the oldest Dokkan Fest exclusive without an EZA, because INT Goku Black got his during the worldwide celebration. So I mean, as soon as it was revealed that the actual summonable unit was going to be a Tournament of Power character, I think it was pretty obvious that this guy was going to get an EZA. And then the android's having a new category, which is Tournament Participants, which obviously includes all of the Universe Survival Saga characters. Pretty much sealed the deal that this guy was going to be getting an EZA. So shout out to the Dokkan Wiki for posting the translations. We're going to go through all of these guys now. I'll give you guys my general impression on them. I had a quick look at some of these while we were waiting, because obviously they do them one at a time, so I had to wait until they're all done. So Jiren is actually the one that I have not seen at all, but I've taken a quick look at these other ones. So let's go ahead and take a look, see how good they are. Hopefully some of these will be good buffs for Kale, you know, even though none of them are a Caulifla, which she does desperately need a new Caulifla. But let's see. So INT BOTA MAGETA. So their super attack post EZA is greatly raise attack for 1 turn, supreme damage to the enemy, and raise defense by 30% for 6 turns. So the multiple turn defense buff is good, because obviously if they get any additional supers, those will obviously, you know, you get the extra buffs as well, and that can stack up to 6 times, so that's good. Tenacious Duo is their passive. Key +3, attack and defense 160%. Then they get an additional 10% per Universe 6 category ally on the team up to 60. So I guess that means if the friend is Universe 6 as well, you can have 1 non-Universe 6 unit on the team and they still get their full buff. So an extra 60% defense is good. Guards all attacks when there's another Universe 6 ally attacking in the same turn, or when HP is 80% or less. Then they get an additional attack and defense 60% for 3 turns, and a medium chance to perform an additional super within the same turn after receiving an attack. So straight away, these guys actually could be an interesting buff for Kale. Because Kale, until she transforms, is not a slot 1 unit. But these guys, with a Universe 6 ally on the rotation, so obviously Kale, they're guarding. They are getting a decent amount of defense at the start of turn, especially if you have multiple Universe 6 allies. Then when they take the first hit in slot 1, they then get an additional 60% defense and a chance to additional super, which then means they could get a double super, which gives them 2 stacks from their super attack effect. So obviously then the hidden potential, you could get a 3rd super as well. So, I mean, I guess it depends what their raw defense is at the start of the turn, because obviously once they take that first hit, they get a buff. But if the first hit of the turn is, say, for example, you know, INT Fusion Zamasu dropping a super attack, then they will take a lot of damage. So that definitely seems decent. Plus AoEs, like him having a buff that he takes when he gets hit, even if he's not in slot 1, if he takes the AoE, he gets that buff. So that is pretty cool. So yeah, he seems like he could be decent. He could be a good slot 1 choice for Kale. So that's what we would like to see, right? We need to see his raw stats and everything in the calcs, but that seems pretty good just on reading his passive, especially for, remember, he's a sub-EZA. So that does seem pretty good. I quite like that. And then we have the STR Full Power Frost. I can't say I have huge expectations for this guy, but greatly raise attack and defense for 1 turn. I mean, it's good super attack effect. Supreme damage, lowers attack. I mean, lowers attack is what it is. There are some events where you can do that still, which is fine. But the greatly raised attack and defense is nice. Key +3, launch an additional attack that has a high chance to become a super and high chance to crit for 6 turns from the start of the turn. Okay, interesting. Attack and defense 160%. Then he gets an additional attack 180 and defense 120 with a high chance of stunning when performing a super attack. So, so he's got 160% start of turn. Then he gets 120% defense on super. I mean, obviously that means, you know, as much as I don't use this as a benchmark for new units anymore, but like he will get destroyed by AoEs. But he does have built-in chance to get an additional super, built-in chance to crit for the first 6 turns. So additional will obviously be good for him, right? If he's getting a triple super turn, he's greatly raising his defense 3 times. The 120 on super will be a decent buff. I think the only problem with him, just looking at this on paper, is he might be able to get up to a decent amount of raw defense, but that's all he will have, right? So even if he gets up to like 6, 7, 800k, let's say, I can't do calcs very quickly in my head or anything like that. I don't even remember what his base stats are. But let's say he is getting up to like, you know, 700k after a double super. That means he's still taking a lot of damage from all of the big boss super attacks. It does make him able to tank normals from basically all of the bosses though, which is good. I think when it comes to sub EZAs, if they're tanking all the normals in the game after their super, I think that is fine for a sub EZA. But because he gets so much of his defense on super, he definitely will not be good against AoEs, which is a shame, because if you can squeak him past the AoE Zamasu, the physical fusion Zamasu is the final stage and he has type advantage. So I guess we'll have to see. But I mean, whilst this doesn't look completely terrible, it doesn't look that impressive to me, right? Especially because most of it is on super, but he could be okay. Then we have Physical Champa. Now Champa was a support unit. So we'll see how good he could be, because if he's a good floating 3rd slot unit for Chaos Team, that would be super beneficial as well. So let's see. He raises defense for 1 turn, does supreme damage to the enemy and greatly lowers defense. So it's only a normal raise for defense, but that is good, right? We take those. And then his passive is defense 160. He gets an additional defense 120 when attacking. Universe 6 allies 2 key and attack and defense 40%, so that is good. Additional attack and defense 20% when HP is 60% or less. Ooh, so yeah, 60% or less HP, obviously at the start of the turn. He's giving 60% attack and defense. And remember, he does get that himself, so that could be okay, I suppose. And then high chance of attack 400%, medium chance of attack 600%, okay. Rare chance of performing a crit. Isn't rare chance like 10 or 15%, which is a bit weird. But this is interesting. So that means if you get this high chance proc, which is 50%, and then you get this medium chance proc, which is 30%, that means he has 1000% attack. Now, the interesting thing about that, of course, is if you remember the beginning part of his passive, he doesn't have any start of turn attack other than what he's getting from his own support. So even though he might get 1000% attack up, is 1000% of what, right? His start of turn attack stat is going to be very, very low. So 1000%, whilst it is a big buff, it's a big buff to a very small number. So I can't imagine, even if you get both of these proc, he's not going to be pushing like, you know, he's not going to be dropping like 10 million attack stats, I don't think. Be interesting to see what the calcs are for his best turn. But I guess his most useful thing is the fact that he's providing 60% support when you're at 60% or less HP, which for a rotation of like, you know, imagine that rotation of INT BOTA MAGETA in slot 1 and then Kale in slot 2, and they're both getting an extra 60% attack and defense from this guy. So that would actually be pretty good. So he could be interesting, but again, unfortunately, he's got an okay bit of defense at the start of turn, but then he gets another big buff on super, so AoEs will be a bit of a shame for him. I kind of almost hate that we have to mention that now. Like I've already said before, I don't really care too much. I don't want AoEs to be this new benchmark where every time a new unit comes out, it's like, oh, well, they're not good against AoEs, so they suck. But it probably is worth mentioning. But in terms of calcs, it was like, what is the kind of attack stat he can get up to? Because our boy Proton is in the chat. So he could probably get that to me by the time I've read out the Jiren ones. But if he's getting his 1000% attack buff, what are his attack stats actually going to look like? But I mean, he could be good, decent support potentially. I mean, he has type advantage over Zamasu, but the AoE is still going to be pretty painful, I imagine. And now, of course, we have the main event, the big EZA himself, STR Jiren. His base kit was very, very bare bones. It was literally, he has a chance to stun everybody on the rotation, and then he guaranteed crits against stunned enemies. So they really needed to do a lot of work to make him worth using. Like I say, I have not looked at this at all until now. So Let's see. Universe Survival Saga full 170, that was to be expected. And then STR types 120. Could be useful for a sub-leader for Battlefield and stuff like that, right? So his super attack effect is greatly raise attack and defense for 1 turn, immense damage and greatly lowers defense. So obviously greatly raise attack and defense for 1 turn is a very good super attack effect. So that's cool. Key +2, attack and defense 200%. So high stat start of turn, which we like to see. Medium chance to stun all enemies. Wow, so they kept it at medium chance. Really? Even when all these big bosses you can't even stun anymore. But he still only has a medium chance to stun. I mean, it is a very powerful mechanic, stunning all the enemies for free before you even have to attack. But I would have thought that would have at least gone up to high chance, but okay. Attacks effective against all types when facing only 1 enemy. That's decent. So that gives him that little bit of extra damage capability against these big bosses. So that's quite good. Reduce damage received by 30% when facing 2 or more enemies. Oh, really? 2 or more enemies? Why does he not just have that? That would make him so much better. Just give him 30% damage reduction. It's not going to be game breaking when facing 2 or more enemies, which, as a reminder, none of the difficult content that came out during the worldwide is against 2 enemies. So that's interesting. Additional attack and defense 50% and high chance of stunning the enemy when performing a super. So getting the extra 50% on super is actually good, right? Because he starts off with a very high amount of base percentage, then he's greatly raising on super and he's getting an extra 50%. So his defense post super could be relatively good. And he has the high chance to stun. He gets a guaranteed crit on stunned enemies. Yep, that's still the same. Plus an additional attack and defense 111%. And performs a guaranteed crit when there's a Universe Survival Saga or tournament participants enemy. Boo. Interesting. So, man, what events do we even have that? Apart from the old school Goku event? What big bosses are there that are Universe Survival Saga or tournament participants? I mean, I guess the anniversary event 6th stage, but that's not that hard. I mean, I guess people, I mean, we know that the 6th anniversary LRs are going to EZA during the 9th anniversary. If the 9th anniversary is Universe Survival Saga themed, we could get a Universe Survival Saga like Red Zone, which could be interesting. But I mean, that's really unfortunate. 111% is such a massive buff, but like, when are you ever going to get that? Like, you're just not. So that's kind of unfortunate. So against 1 enemy, he's 200% attack and defense. He's effective against all types, and then he gets 50% attack and defense on super. And that's it. If we take into account we're doing a big boss that can't be stunned. So yeah, that seems very disappointing. I mean, his kit was not great to start with, but like, why is this 30% damage reduction locked behind multiple enemies? Just give him the 30% damage reduction, and that makes him considerably better already. Because after supering, or even after like a double super, I imagine his raw defense number is probably going to be reasonably good. But like, you throw the 30% damage reduction on top of that, and he actually could be quite good. But why is that locked behind 2 enemies when none of the new content is against 2 enemies or more? So he's like a super battle road unit still, which, I mean, bit disappointing. He's not, that's very unfortunate. Yeah, like his passive was such a blank slate. Like, they added in damage reduction, but then they locked it behind multiple enemies. So very, very unfortunate. Doesn't seem that great. I don't know. We'll wait till we see numbers, but yeah, locking this 111% behind a specific enemy kind of sucks as well. If we get difficult content where that can be activated, maybe that would be good, but very unfortunate. And then just a quick shout out to Proton. Just posted in the chat. So assuming a 200% team, all links activated, which probably isn't that likely, but it doesn't matter. New passive in his best situation, all by himself. Champa gets to an attack stat of 8.3 million. So, I mean, that's not terrible for a floating support unit, but this is what I was saying, that like him getting 1,000% attack buff isn't going to make him absolutely insane. So 8.3 million. I mean, still good for a floating support unit, but there you go. So these guys seem really, really good, especially for Kale's team. This guy seems like he could be okay. Champa could definitely be a very strong support unit, and then Jiren just feels very disappointing. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. So that's going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.